I can tell you one thing. Technology is the single most important aspect of every business that has successfully scaled.
It's time for that Real Estate Tech Guy. It's your weekly chance to explore how technology can help your real estate business explode. Each week, you'll hear from real estate investors who have been there and done that and find out their favorite technology tips. Listen in as Jordan speaks with tech companies and learns about new technologies and new ideas that will help you scale your business. And now, join your host, Jordan Samuel Fleming, CEO of SmartPhone, for this week's episode.
Hey everybody, it's Jordan Fleming here with another episode of That Real Estate Tech Guy. Today is an investor episode, and I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Brandin Pettersen. Brandin, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your company?
Awesome, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's always an honor to be on a podcast, especially with you. I've been using your product a while. Let's see. I've been doing real estate since 2009, 2010. Kind of dabbled in it. You know, I started out as a investor, got into being a realtor, broker, went back to flipping, got into wholesaling. Back then we didn't call it wholesaling, okay? We called it hooking people up with deals. I would say like the term wholesaling, you know what I mean? Like back before YouTube and all that. But when I actually heard of it as a true business, 2017-ish, and I think I got your product. I started using a smartphone 18, 19, somewhere, don't quote me, somewhere around there. I mean, I've been using you for forever, man. It's funny story actually, because I was initially using cell phones, just having my team use cell phones. And the problem was, like, we used our office phones, like, first, with the buttons.
Like actual buttons, you know, those things that are cables that go into walls.
Exactly, right? And then, but my team needed to text, so they were texting from their cell phones. And eventually, laissez-faire attitude, they started using everything on their cells. The problem was when I started losing, you know, people exiting, they were taking all of those contacts with them, all of the conversations, the details. And I said at that point, I think that's when I knew I needed a product, and I was Googling hardcore, man. And I don't even know, it's been so long. Somehow I came across your company, and I've been using you ever since for our VoIP system.
That's fantastic. I mean, I am fascinated, you know, given that you've been in the real estate within a lot of facets game for a while, you know, that the reason I kind of decided to do this podcast was there are lots of folks who are very good and very knowledgeable about the kind of technology they use. But I would say it's like a 10% of what, you know, the main population doesn't really, I don't think really dives into the technology enough. And so I'm really fascinated to kind of, you know, that's what, you know, so from a phone system point of view, the pain point was really people, A, texting, and B, people using their own devices, which is screwing you up. What about from a, you know, if you think about your kind of your journey in a technology sense, how did you go CRM, then phone system, like what did you what was that journey like?
Listen, man, you got to understand though, that question, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because there was no technology when I started. I mean, listen, I'm not old, right? But in 2009, 2010, we didn't have the tools that we have today. So technology wasn't something, and it sounds like it was so long ago, but really in 2010, we didn't have you, right? Like there was no Instagram, YouTube, all of this stuff that you were learning from or utilizing. I mean, I was using Excel. Now I was a realtor back then, so I kind of dabbled in the CRM, but realtors are very anti-technology, anti-structure, because they get into it for freedom, and it takes a lot for them to learn. Plus, a lot of realtors are transient. So when you learn from one brokerage and use their system and you leave for another one, it's like you have to learn a whole nother system of technology. So I wasn't really utilizing tech. Even in my flips, like when I was flipping, it was like in my younger days, like it was all
like a cell phone and Excel.
Cell phones, photos, Excels, text messages back and forth. I have a tablet now, but back then I just had a marble notebook. I was keeping all my budgets and everything in, like a moleskin, you know what I mean? And I don't think until I got into wholesaling that I started looking at tech. And I think my first system was I paid some dude from India for Podio. Found him on whatever
Whatever
Upwork
it
or
was
something.
back then.
Yeah. And I had him make me a hodgepodge of a Podio system. And that was that. And when I got Podio is when I started looking. That was when I had the issue. It was like a transition. We were using our old phones and notebooks. And then from that point, we got our CRM. People started leaving. I said, hey, I got this technology now. I need the next thing for VoIP, for like a online system for phones. And that's when I found smartphones. So I would say I got my CRM first. Then I went into my phone system. But yeah, so that's kind of like my path into the tech.
I mean, what a remarkably, different. I think a lot of investors now won't really have ever done the Excel kind of, they'll have bypassed that now. But
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of a change and the things that a good CRM brought you, well, what are you using right now?
So I use a couple things for tech, but my main CRM is InvestorFuse IF3. Highly recommend it. If anyone needs the hookup, let me know. I've worked with John closely on that, and I love it. I mean, it makes the whole action-based system. It's a professional CRM. I love it over Podio. We have click to call, obviously, smartphone huge. I've been
literally launched that integration.
Just launched it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always using you with InvestorFuse, but your ease of use into InvestorFuse, the way you guys customize it now with InvestorFuse, it is, if you guys don't have it, you need to check it out. I mean, it's very custom into there. And so that's definitely helps with everything. The way the call recordings get dropped into the CRM, the activity logs and everything in there for the agents to see, and they don't necessarily need access into the back end admin system of smartphone. They could do it all from their CRM. Love it, man. And that's definitely changed the game for us. I think it keeps us more organized. I see a lot of guys still using their cell phones, and I don't understand it. I am,
I don't actually like giving anybody my phone number. I'm massively, like, I'm not even sure my mother's got my phone number. Like, I am, do not text me, do not call me. My phone number is there for me to, my phone is there for me to access data. And I don't ever want to hear it ring.
I use your system. So I have a cell phone on smartphone that is in my email tagline. So, and it forwards to my actual cell. But so that way for the wholesaling side of my business, because obviously I flip and I do other stuff and rentals, but like for the wholesaling side, even title companies, all them, they get my smartphone cell that forwards directly to my cell phone. And then I could pick it up and I see it. And I see, because you allow me to set the caller ID. So I set the caller ID. I know exactly that it's my wholesaling cell phone. So that way no one gets my personal cell. And I like that. And I give that to the team too.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let me dive into the InvestorFuse bit for a bit, because I'm always curious, you've obviously gone through the technological wars, but you also went through the Podio, you kind of went through a Podio system. I don't know, did you go to InvestorFuse on Podio and then move with InvestorFuse to IF3? No. Or were you in Podio and then moved to IF3?
So I was in Podio. I knew John from way back in the day, and John's been trying to get me into IF3 and InvestorFuse. John's the CEO of InvestorFuse, co-founder, and for people who don't know, and he was trying to get me in, and I was adamant against it. I'm like, I got Podio, I'm fine. And then we started talking about what InvestorFuse was really doing and what it was becoming, and I switched over directly to the IF3 version of it, the third version. So I never touched any of the earlier versions from it. And that's when we started instituting a lot of the big features now. And now your guys, I think one of the biggest features released this year was the click to call with smartphones.
So let me, because I was curious, I mean, what are the benefits of, I have a sort of weird scenario where obviously I run a platform that lots of investors use, but I myself don't use the phone very often. And I don't have a need to do sales like that on the phone. But I'm always curious, one of the things that it struck me when I was talking to John, and I've talked a lot to John about InvestorFuse IF3, is, he talks a lot about the sort of next action element of InvestorFuse. Can you walk me through, you and your team moving to InvestorFuse, what are the sort of really key things that you're getting out of a CRM for your team now? Just in terms of CRM, because I think there's a lot of investors who listen to this side of podcast and they're trying to figure out what CRM to go through. So tell us a little bit why InvestorFuse is working for you.
So I'll actually give some value and kind of break down what we do. So InvestorFuse is an action-based system. The difference between this CRM and other ones is I don't tell my guys what to do, right? We don't have these empty statuses that you have to remember who's next or set tasks or anything like that. So in fact, they get to set their own schedule of what we call action-based, right? And so every time with smartphone, when you log, so our guys, and it's funny because I just made the training video for it this morning because we're updating our training programs. And when we go in, we open up a lead, we click to call immediately using smartphone because we have the web extension in, we click to call. And as it's dialing, we move over to what's called the action page. And it's 2 questions. Did I get a hold of this? Did I talk to the seller or did I not talk to the seller? While it's ringing, we're waiting. As soon as if it doesn't pick up, we go, I did not talk to the seller. Simple as that. And then immediately it comes, what do you want to do next? So we have a couple, the way our leads go is we have leads and opportunities. So a lead is call new lead or call attempt. So while I'm trying to make that initial contact, if call attempt 2, what do you want to do next? Call attempt 3, call attempt 4, and so on and so on. Or if I get a hold of them, right, I can then select, hey, I got a hold of them. What do you want to do next? Follow up with seller, follow up on offer. So I'm picking my next action and automatically moves it down your pipeline from a lead, call new lead, call attempt, to an opportunity, following up with the seller, following up on your offer, due diligence, these things, or if you're in person, seller appointment and all that. We don't do in person, so we're strictly phone based. And so what happens is because of these actions, they're actually scheduling out their day just like a real salesperson. I've done door-to-door sales. I've sold products. I've done a lot of stuff in my younger days. And you would have to fill up your schedule of your pipeline, right? You'd have to manage your pipeline. So my guys, when they come in, they say, hey, man, I said I was going to follow up with these 5 sellers today. I had 10 offers I had to follow up on. This guy I owe due diligence on, and these ones I still haven't got a hold of, and I have to call attempt 2, 3, and 4 them today. And those are their actions that they have to do, and we do that all from the CRM using smartphone.
What I love about that as well is as someone who's built CRMs for real estate investors, I've been guilty of this in the past. They can get really complex and they can get super busy in terms of you look at a lead and you're almost overwhelmed with information and statuses and the options that you can do. What I find really interesting about that and your description of IF3 for InvestorFuse is the way it can kind of focus the mind of the agent on it's like, fuck the noise.
That's key.
This is what you'll call this guy now, get him or not. Oh, you got him? What do you want to do? Boom.
Yeah. And it's different than a task, man. So a lot of people go, oh, those are tasks. They're not tasks. I'm not filling up these empty tasks that I can have 10 tasks on a lead. The thing is you cannot have a lead without an action in this system, meaning truly, people use the term, but this is truly no lead left behind. Now, InvestorFuse also allows us, we call it groups or buckets. So when they're done through the day, like all of our new leads from cold calling stuff, they get dropped into I call it closers bucket for the closers. So when they're done doing their clicking the call and dialing all the people that they told themselves that they were going to do today, they then go, oh, it's noon. Okay, let me go and grab some new leads. I've done all of my follow-ups. I've talked to all the people or have attempted to, texted, all that stuff. Let me go grab new ones and add to my pipeline so I can build my pipeline and manage it. So they start the day by managing and following up with their pipeline. And by the end of the day, they're adding and rebuilding that pipeline because hey man, you can work all the leads in your system, but if you're not constantly adding to the front end of it, you're going to wind up with a dead pipeline. That snowball effect is going to be lost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love that description of how, then the genuine no lead left behind, because it's not cluttered. It's literally just the next step. Fuck 5 steps down the road. Stop pretending like you got 15 tasks on a lead. This is the thing you need to do. And
one thing.
And nothing else matters because you can't do anything else until that's done. That's really interesting.
It is. And, with any system and technology, especially with employees, they're going to always try to skirt the system. So we have training involved, and our manager, like I got a sales manager, he knows what to look for to make sure they're doing what they're doing and they're not pushing stuff forward or doing that. So with technology, there has to be some type of oversight in it to make sure it's being utilized properly. So we institute that as well.
And have you found in general, when you made those switches and you, particularly maybe when you switched to IF3, did you find that your team was able to adjust relatively? There's always going to be some friction when you move a system. There's always going to be I used to do this and now I got a muscle memory, something else.
Oh,
how
hell
was
no,
it
man.
like?
No. So I've switched a couple systems, right? So two of the biggest changes I've made, switching from Podio to InvestorFuse, and then switching from Excel to my data platform, REI Op-Center, right? Each one of those things was drastic for us, right? Switching from, and let's just say it, Podio's not really technology, okay? Like, I know it's going to hurt some feelings out there, but it's not a real CRM. It was never designed to do that for us. So it's almost like Stone Age style stuff, just like where I kept my data in Excel and moving that into a real platform. Those were some of the biggest hurdles to make as a business owner, because I had to redesign our SOPs and our processes. So John came to me when we did the InvestorFuse merge, and he's like, do you want me to white glove? And that's the beauty about InvestorFuse. They'll white glove you. And I said, no. So actually using smartphone, because I had smartphone hooked into my Podio and I had smartphone hooked into InvestorFuse, I actually created a Podio campaign and I set two of my people aside, and their job was to go through 20,000, whatever it was. It was their only job. Dial everybody. And then if they say yes, push them into InvestorFuse. If they say no, mark them as dead. We call it dead. And that's actually where the InvestorFuse resurfacing concept came about, is because I was resurfacing all of my Podio leads to move them into InvestorFuse. So was it a pain? Yes. Was there a little bit of a process jump there? Yeah, but we kind of pivoted, and instead of trying to bog our new system down, we actually made our old CRM into a marketing campaign, set two people to just focus on those with texting and calling on a smartphone. And then they would push. John put a button in for us. His team put a button in. As soon as they clicked the button, it went straight over to InvestorFuse, and then that lead was there for our closers.
And it's clean. What I love, the clean data in a CRM. When I see people start a new CRM and they just import 15,000 shitty leads.
Now, why would you do that?
Why are you doing that to yourself?
You're just bogging yourself down. And then, so again, we wanted to, and it was a great opportunity, and we made a shit ton of money. And that's where that resurfacing concept came up with, because I made a shit ton of money just resurfacing leads that we would have otherwise not touched by having somebody start from scratch. I told them to ignore, other than the do not calls, obviously check with your attorney, all that stuff. But other than the do not calls, we wouldn't call those again. But so.
No, that's fantastic, and it's one of my one of my biggest bugbears is bad data. When I see people not keep their data clean, it goes to when I first started in business 18 years ago or whatever it was. I remember going to a meeting with someone who said, how many prospects do you have? And I was like, I don't know, 4. And he said, I've got 100. And I was like, really? You've got 100 prospects? I'm like, really? You have 100 prospects? And of course, he was fooling himself, because he had probably 4 or 5 prospects, and he wasted time with the other 96. And I feel like that happens on CRMs all the time when, I got 15,000 leads in my system. Yeah, you probably have 300.
And that's the thing. And man, I can go down this road all the time. So when our sales process, with the way InvestorFuse, the way we set up, and you made a comment earlier about how CRMs can be complex. InvestorFuse draws this very line where it has all of the complexity, but it makes the ease of use very easy, right? So we can set up a complex system in an easy way with InvestorFuse. So with resurfacing, my agents aren't afraid. And resurfacing means when we dead out a lead. So if I talk to you and you say, you know what, I decided to keep it. A lot of times people get a little, but he's got motivation. Maybe I'll just follow up with him in 3 months or 6 months, and I'll call him and I'll keep him in my lead bucket. And so he never dies. He just stays in this long-term nurture or something like that, or some long-term follow-up. And it bogs, even if you're not seeing it every day, it still bogs that total lead count down, and that builds over time. So what we've done is we teach and we do training once a week. We go over CRM training every morning, and we do a morning sales meeting, and Tuesdays is CRM training for 15 minutes before we do script training. And one of the things is knowing that it's okay to dead a lead, because with InvestorFuse or technology, the system will automatically dead it out. We set up rules, and depending on the lead status, in 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, it resurfaces up into our follow-up specialists, and they call it. And if it's the person, hey, did you change your mind? You want to sell? And they say, yeah, so-and-so died. We're ready now. They move it back over to the closers, and now the closers refocus on it. But now what it's done is that it's allowed our team to stay clean with their pipeline and not keep so much in there. Like you said, the 100 of them, for fear that one of them might turn into a lead. It's you talk to them, you move them through the script, the sales process. If it's a no, that's okay. We call it no pain. It's pain. You can have motivation, but if you don't have pain, then they don't stay in your pipeline. Boom.
Absolutely.
And so that's how we keep our data clean and our pipelines clean, using the action-based system.
So now, in terms of, just because we've got data on our mind right now, I mean, there are loads of different technologies out there, companies out there that provide data. Have you had any experience with some of those companies that you feel have done you, if you're buying data, do you have any that you recommend over others?
It depends on what you're going for, obviously. So we pull data from, we pull data from county records directly. We pull data from Batch. We have an account on Batch where we get a subscription. We have an account on PropStream where we get a subscription, and we pull data from ListSource and DataZap, right? So we have 5 different sources. And I'm not going to lie, we have some off data that we have, like a couple people will send emails to buy some niche list or something, but nothing crazy. But our goal, because we have our own call center, so we need to add 75, 100,000 new lines of data every month, essentially, into the beast. So we're always looking for data. That's why we keep subscriptions on Batch and PropStream. Not so much that I'm not going to recommend either one, because honestly, if you understood how data works, they're all coming from the same aggregators and sources. Just depends on what level of hierarchy they're at. Data is data, man. It's just a matter of how clean you could get it and how recently updated it is.
Absolutely. No, interesting. I just asked because it's funny, I've got some episodes coming up with some data companies, and we are at smartphone. We've been integrating some data points into smartphone as well. So I'm always curious as to where, how people are dealing with data, where they're getting it, and a follow-up just in terms of how when you're getting the data from these sources, if you're doing those sort of 4 or 5, whatever sources you're talking about, how much are you tracking the effectiveness of each source?
So I don't know, but we use a system. It's REI Op-Center. It's a system that I co-created with John. It's a data platform. So with that, we're actually able to pinpoint. So think about it like it's a database for all of your data. The way you buy it, you dump it in raw, no need for Excel, no need for anything. You dump it in, and you're able to pivot and see, or pinpoint and see, where the most leads or contracts are coming from, what sources they are. Because right now, for example, when we got REI Op-Center up and running, I had over 300, 400 Excel files, all in different folders. And that's just the raw data. And then when you send it out to SkipTrace, you have to organize it. So then I got another 300. When you get it back from SkipTrace, you got another 300. Then when you clean it up to send out for marketing, you have more. So we couldn't, to answer your question, we couldn't track it at all. There was no way to tell. It was so horrible. We could track it as close to like a category as possible, but to truly get down to the row of data was almost damn near impossible without a lot of VAs and a lot of work. With REI Op-Center, though, it's not hard, especially as we're working on an integration with InvestorFuse. It's very easy to tell where your data is coming from and if it's on more than one data source. So if you pull data from Batch and PropStream, we could tell that, hey, this was on both Batch and PropStream, but you pulled the Batch list in May and you pulled the PropStream list in June. So really, you're going to give credit to the May one. Your Batch is going to get credit for that. And so the score goes up.
Oh, interesting. Oh, well, that's both fascinating it sounds like I need to get the REI Op-Center on the podcast at some point very soon, which I'm excited to do. But it's also, it's one of my things that I've always, I always try and encourage people who are maybe setting up their first CRM or getting involved in data for the first time is, you gotta, if you've bought a list and then you buy a different list, track what you're getting from each, and not only track what you're getting in terms of a financial return, but track the effort it's going into each. Understand that, so you can make informed decisions. Do I want to buy more from here? Do I want to buy more of this type of lead?
So I would say my recommendation, and I did this prior to having our REI Op-Center, is we have a guy on our team and he's phenomenal. Every Excel sheet, if anyone follows me on Instagram, anything I ever show or show off, I didn't create. We have a data guy who literally, this is his love of life, is data. And he just crunches, and so he's always in our Excel sheets. And that's, so I would recommend that somebody would find, whether you find a part-time person online that can work and do what you need, or just if you have the money, bring someone on full-time to really do what he's saying, what Jordan's saying, and that's to understand your data. Whether you have a big platform like REI Op-Center, you're just in Excel, it is important that you have somebody on your team able to figure out what deals you got, where they came from, what list source they came from, what skip source you use, what month you pulled it, and how many times you've pulled it, essentially, to know whether or not, or where you should be putting more of your money, essentially. And I think as a solopreneur, that could be tough to do because you're doing everything else, Jordan, like your dialing, your sales, your dispo. So that's where I would recommend, if you don't have a system, to find a person, find a who to help you with the how.
Absolutely. Well, that leads us nicely into the fast 5 questions. Five questions I ask all the investors that come on the podcast. I'm going to guess some of your answers already, but I'm going to fire them at you. I usually can guess.
He told me about the fast 5 as I got on the show, so I've never heard these before. He says, "Did you get the PDF?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You'll be good." And fine. I am. So this is 100% off the cuff. No idea what he's going to ask me, but I'm going to trust whatever he is. It's meant to be. So let's do it, man. Shoot him at me.
That's all right. When I went on the best ever podcast, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I think he's got something similar. He's got like 3 questions he asked everyone. And I had no idea he was going to ask me that. And one of them was like
better that way.
One of them was really nuanced. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, let's get a good one for this one. So, all right. Question number 1. And I'm gonna mentally guess what your answers are going to be on this. What technology product has had the biggest impact, the biggest single impact on your business?
I'd say smartphone.
Well, I'll take that answer.
Because I've been using it the longest, man. I mean, back in 2018, 19, when I started, it changed the way I did my business, the organization of everything.
Absolutely, I will take it. Question number 2: what's the biggest mistake you've made with technology in your business?
Not building processes and training programs around it sooner, assuming that everybody was going to be able to, quote unquote, figure it out because, learn by doing. Not everyone is like me. And I made a comment that I updated my training programs this morning on smartphone and InvestorFuse. And that's the thing, is create those training programs, hire someone to help you do it if you don't have the time, but create a process and a training around the systems and technology that you use in your business, and update them too. Update them constantly. Annually.
It's a living thing, right?
Yeah, it's a living thing. Yeah.
Question number 3: what is the well, I'm going to guess this may kind of go along with your answer number 2, but what is the best advice you would have for someone new on how to integrate technology in your business? See above, I'm guessing.
I would say who, not how. When you're integrating something, there's a need to do it all yourself. And I can understand that because I'm that type of person. It took me a lot. So when you say advice, the advice is find the person to do the task. Don't try to do the task for you. Just write down what the task is, what you think what impact it's going to have, what the expectation, what it looks like if the implementation of it is success, and what it looks like if it's a failure. Hand that off to somebody you hire, have them go and do it, create processes and training around it.
Awesome.
From the start.
Awesome. Question number 4: what's the one thing you wish you'd known when you started your real estate business? The wholesaling one, let's say. Should have sent you the PDF before.
I know. I would say, what's the one thing I wish I would have known? I'm going to go back to the fact of who, not how. stop doing everything yourself. And when I say who, not how, I don't mean just the hiring of people. I mean who I surround myself with. I wish I would have gotten in rooms a lot sooner with people better than me and put my ego aside. And I think that would have pushed me further faster than me trying to figure it all out myself. And then the who, not how, doing it all myself. I think I wasted a few years doing that. And this year I'm working on my leadership. That's my goal for 2022, is better leadership, because I was the biggest sinner when it came to doing everything for everyone, having to know everything. And that's just,
You
I wish I
Superman
would have
it.
known that. Yeah.
Superman did. You Superman did,
right?
your
Like,
business.
I don't know.
We all do that. There's not a single person I know who's grown a successful business that doesn't have to have a moment where they put the Superman cape down. And usually their life immeasurably improves when they do, but their business also does, because you empower your people and you create a better team.
There you go. But your question was, what do I wish I would have known? So like when I bring it back, the reason why I say that is because where would I be? So it's not, I get what you're saying. Everybody's like that. A lot of successful business people. But what if somebody told me that in 17, 8, like when I started this full time, what if someone shared that secret and gave me the golden transcript and like, here's what you need to do, hire other people, create process. Where would I be if I knew that information? Problem is, like you said, we learn by doing. There's that moment that you figure it out. Mine took some years to figure that out.
Well, you got one question left, and that is, you're speaking to someone who's just starting in real estate, and you have to say 3 technology products. Doesn't have to be the brand, but the type of product, a CRM or lead gen or whatever, SEO, whatever. If you had to say these 3 things are what you should start with, what would your recommendation be?
I would say that's easy. I would say first thing you do is you go to InvestorFuse, purchase their premium edition, and let them know that I sent you, and you'll get a lot of training that goes along with that, and I'll make sure you do. And then connect with Jordan for a smartphone, because without a CRM, or with a CRM, you need a dialer. And most importantly, you need to connect with me to get REI Op-Center to organize your data so you can free it and understand your data better. And so that way you have your data side understood, your sales side understood, and you have your gen, like your lead gen, your calling understood, your VoIP. With those 3 things, you can't go wrong. Don't try to save money on it. Just make sure you budget for it.
That's great. Absolutely. And I was say, at the end of the day, I've always said to people, you can make all those things like e-signatures and automations around transact. You can do that shit, but if you're not getting leads, organizing them, following them up, and closing them, step 2 doesn't happen.
100%. And then if you're not tracking them, like you said, with the data, understanding your data, it doesn't matter how much money you make. Eventually it will fall apart. Eventually it's all going to come crashing down. And be professional and get a freaking VoIP system like smartphone. I mean, don't be using your cell phone, calling people from all different markets, using your personal cell. I mean, just get a system. Too many people skip that, Jor. I'm sorry, man. Too many people skip that step. They're trying to save money and they don't do that. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, is trying to save that money and using your phone. Get your first deal. When you do, don't spend any of it. Go reinvest it into systems and scale.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon, it's been a genuine pleasure to have you on the podcast. Last closing remarks to you. Tell everybody how to find you, the things you want to point them to, and I'll make sure they're in the podcast notes and the website.
You can find me on Instagram at Mr.RealOvative, and got a podcast called Let's Talk Real Estate and Stuff. Let's Talk Realestate.tv. You can find me on either one of those 2 things. And let's lock and load, baby. I appreciate you having me on. This was a blast. Love talking technology, and of course, love smartphone, man. Been using it forever. I'm going to keep on using it.
I appreciate it, man. And don't forget, if you're listening to this, do the things you're supposed to do. Like, subscribe, review. It really does help. Do all the things and make sure that other people, investors just like you, can listen and learn from people like Brandon. Brandon, thanks. Have a great week, man.
All right, lock and load. Take it easy, man. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another amazing episode of That Real Estate Tech Guy. Head over to thatrealeestatetechguy.com to check out all episodes and get special discounts on tons of awesome real estate technology platforms.